Aloha, everyone, and welcome again to my daily live about how we can use NLP, timeline therapy, mental emotional release, hypnosis, HUNA, and as of yesterday, havening to enable us to maintain mental, emotional, and physiological well-being during this time of global anxiety, fear, and panic and uncertainty. I'm just by myself tonight. Yesterday we had James Mellison join me. Thank you for the feedback on that. I thought it was an absolute fantastic session with James, so thank you, James. And I've been continuing to line up other guests that will be rolling out over the coming days and the coming weeks as we continue to go through this situation. So tonight a little bit different, really. What I want to talk to you about tonight or today, depending wherever you're watching this from, is certain of these things called NLP metaprograms, or you might be kind of like non-technically thought of being thinking styles, the way that we think, and how these particular metaprograms or thinking styles affect how we feel and how we behave in certain situations and contexts. And there was two just popped into my mind this morning when I was thinking about what I was going to talk to you about tonight, which is very much around the different ways that we will experience the lockdown and the isolation. So the first of those metaprograms is called it's a basic metaprogram, and it's called external behavior, and it's whether somebody's more introvert or whether somebody's more extrovert. So the question that elicits this particular metaprogram is this, which will enable you to identify which one you are. And it's a sliding scale. It's not binary. It's not black and white. It's analog. And then we'll talk about how that particular metaprogram profile will respond to the lockdown and also, potentially isolation. So the question is this: if you're absolutely exhausted, really, really tired, your batteries are completely low, do you prefer to be by yourself only, or possibly with just somebody that you're very, very close to, somebody you feel comfortable with? Or do you prefer to be out with other people? When you really need to recharge your batteries, do you prefer to be by yourself only, or with potentially one or a few people that you're very, very close to, feel comfortable with? Or do you prefer to be out with a whole number of people, partying even, And as I say, it's a sliding scale. So some people are more introvert, some people are more extrovert. The people that are more introvert will find the lockdown and isolation easier to deal with, because it's actually what they prefer when they're tired and they need to recharge themselves. People who are more extrovert are going to find lockdown and isolation more challenging. And there is actually a way of changing this metaprogram. And I just did it. The reason why I thought about it was I just did this with a client. And he's very, very, very extrovert. He's usually out all the time, needs to be surrounded by people, actually gets recharged and revitalized by having people around, partying. And of course, we can't do that at this point in time. So he was finding that really challenging and contacted me and said, is there something that we can do? And there is. There is actually a technique, a process for changing metaprograms. There are 20 metaprograms altogether. I'm just going to take you through two tonight, which I think are really relevant at the moment. And we teach that on our NLP Master Practitioner training, but also how we go about changing these metaprograms to work in the context that we're in. Now, it's like a 15-minute intervention. 50% of the population are more introvert, 50% are more extrovert. So it's not something that I want to take time in this live doing. But what I did this afternoon in the studio was record that intervention, the actual full-on intervention for switching from extrovert to introvert. Because once all of this situation's over and you want to change back to extrovert, go for it. But I just thought that would be a useful intervention for people that were finding it challenging, because they do have a more extrovert metaprogram. And I did it with the client, worked absolutely brilliantly. They're way more comfortable now. They're actually quite comfortable being on their own in the small little environment, which was the outcome. So I put together a audio recording of that process to guide you through that process. So I'm not going to put it on a video. I'm not going to put it on the live. So what I'm actually doing with this live, I'll put the link for you to download that technique and that process. If there's anybody else that you know that you go like, whoa, that's what's happening with so-and-so, then please share that with them, because I think it'd be really, really helpful. You don't need any NLP or any timeline therapy or any mental emotional release or any HUNA experience already. It's for absolutely anybody would be able to follow that process and get the results. So just click the link, just put your email in. We'll send you an email, and you'll be able to download it so you can play it on your phone, on your tablet, or on your laptop. So that's the first metaprogram that I think is relevant at the moment, and that's a real general one. Now, the second metaprogram that I wanted to mention tonight is more for people that are in a lockdown, possibly with their loved ones, with their family, and you're not used to that. Even if it's just a couple, quite often, you're out at work all day and you come in and out at different points in time, and now you're finding yourself around each other for 24 hours a day, and you're not used to that. You start to experience different things in your relationship, whether it's with your loved one, your partner, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or your family, and you're experiencing things that you've never experienced before, and some of those things might be challenging and causing friction and arguments and frustration and those kind of things. So the next one really is just more educational. When I work with my private clients around relationship coaching, this is a real eye-opener for them. Quite often when I talk about this, they ask me, have you got a video recorder set up in our house? Because you've just described our environment totally. And it isn't. It's just, this is the wonderful thing about these things called metaprograms, because once you understand them, you start to understand why people do certain things in certain situations and contexts, and that it's not them deliberately attempting to piss you off. It's just their metaprogram, and it's different than yours. Okay, so this is a big eye opener for a lot of the couples that I work with in relationships, and it's a metaprogram called Information Processing Style. It's Information Processing Style, and this is more black and white. This is more binary. There are internal processes and there are external processes. Now, the question that you ask to find out which one of those a person is this. When you're faced with a major challenge in your life, a real big, massive challenge in your life, which of course at the moment probably the majority of people are experiencing that. When you're faced with a major challenge in your life, is it absolutely necessary for you to be on your own and think about it by yourself only? Or do you really absolutely need to talk to somebody else about it? The internal processor is the person that needs to go off and think by themselves. to the point where an internal processor may be aware that they're not okay, but they wouldn't be able to externalize what they're not okay about. So if you actually ask them, what's up? I can tell you're not okay. What's the matter? They might not be able to verbalize it to you because they might not be consciously aware of it until they go off by themselves and go internal and really process it. The external processor, on the other hand, won't be able to resolve the situation until they've externalized it in some way, which would normally be talking to somebody else. So the way this plays out is that the external processor. So here's the where it can be a challenge in a relationship when you've got an internal processor in a relationship with an external processor. You've got two internal processors, they just go off on their own thing, sort themselves out. You've got two external processors, they externally process. But, they think that everybody does that, and that's quite normal. But when you've got an internal processor and an external processor together, this is the kind of thing that plays out in a relationship. So the external processor has a problem. They go to their partner or their friend or family member, and they go, "I've really got a problem. Can you help me?" And of course, these are people that we love. These are people that we're close to, and we go, "Yeah, of course. Let's get a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever it is, and let's have a chat." And then the external processor literally goes, it's like, and they talk. And by talking about it, by externalizing it, they resolve it for themselves. And they say to the internal process, "Oh, thank you, thanks so much for your help." And they go off. Whereas the internal processor is going, "But I haven't even said anything yet. Well, what was that all about?" The internal processor. Now, the thing with the internal processor and the external processor in the relationship will know that there's something not okay. I mean, when we're with people that we're really close to, that we love and that we care about, whether we've got NLP sensory acuity skills or not, we know when somebody's not okay. And so, when we care about them, we want them to be okay again. So the external processor in the relationship will go to the internal processor in the relationship and go, "Look, I can tell you're not okay. Come on, sit down. Let's talk about it." And the internal processor, "No, I'm fine. No, I can tell that you're not. I can tell that you're not fine. No, really, I'm okay. I'm okay. No, sit down. You'll feel better if you just talk about it." So in the end, the internal processor kind of caves in to get a bit of peace and quiet, quite honestly. And they go, the external processor go, "Right, so what's going on?" Now, possibly the internal processor doesn't even know. They just know that they're not okay. But, they say something, really, just so that the more external processor in the relationship leaves them alone for a while so they can go off in their peace and quiet and resolve the whole thing. So they go, "This is it." The external processor said, "See, told you to feel a lot better if you just talked about it." And they leave the internal processor on their own to go and process that. Now there is a third metaprogram now as I'm thinking about it. These are live, so I'm kind of like jamming this, which is that there is another metaprogram which is called the frame of reference metaprogram. And the question for getting the frame of reference metaprogram is this. How do you know whether you've done a good job or not? Do you just know, or do you need somebody else to tell you? Now, there are some people who just know, and they're completely internal frame of reference. There are other people who go, "Absolutely, I wouldn't have a clue until somebody told me." They're completely external frame of reference. Now, there are other two options. So if you went like, "I just know," And then I ask you a further question, which is, and do you like to go and check it with somebody else? And you go, yeah, actually, I do like to go and check it, even though inside of me I know I've done good. Then you'd be internal with an external check. If you're internal with an external check, that means that you balance, you know inside, but you just like to check it outside. If you went like, I need somebody to tell me, and then I went, and do you check inside as well? Do you have an internal check with it? And you went like, yeah, then I do check. Yeah. But you go more with the external than the internal, then you'd be external with an internal check. If they're kind of like balanced 50-50, you'd be balanced internal, external. So the reason I said that is that if you've got a internal processor which has an external check or an external frame of reference, this is what will happen. So the external processor relationship has said, sit down, talk about it, you feel a lot better. And so, but the internal processor really just didn't even know what was going on. So they just went, well, this is what's happening. But it was like what was happening last time they knew. It's not how they are now. It's the last time they knew how they were, this is how they were. The more external processor wanders off and leaves them alone. They then do some quiet time, some downtime. They work out what's going on with them and they work out how to resolve it. And though they need to have an external reference on it or an external check. So they go to their partner, their husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, close friend, family, whatever, and they go, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think I'm going to do this, which is going to be different from what they actually told the more external processor, possibly only hours earlier. Now the external processor is going, what's going on? You're always changing your mind. Only an hour ago, you said it was this. Now you say it's this. You're all over the place. And they're not. It's just that we have different metaprograms. People aren't aware that these metaprograms exist because they're very, very unconscious. And what the majority of people do is that they automatically assume, unconsciously, that everybody is the same as them. And we're absolutely not. Absolutely not at all. And, there's nothing, when I do my relationship coaching with my private clients around those metaprograms, it's not about needing to change them. They work. They just work in different ways. It's an education thing, and when I explain that to the clients I've got in front of me, because I do it at the same time when I've got both of them in front of me, and they look at each other and they go like, whoa, okay. I thought he or she was just doing that to piss me off. I didn't realize that they worked differently internally. So I think those are a couple of really important metaprograms to bear in mind at this point in time with the isolation, the forced lockdown. The other thing to think about is, particularly if you are in total isolation, as in you're just by yourself at this point in time, and you identified yourself as being more of an external processor, then in some way, shape or form, to be okay and to move forward, it's important that you're able to externalize that. Which nowadays with technology, obviously there's a phone, there's Skype, there's Zoom, there's FaceTime, there's all those kind of things, which hopefully you have that and you're using that technology. If you're in a position where, you don't even have that or have anybody to be able to do that with, then journaling is a good way of externalizing content, what's going on for you, without actually needing another person. So there's ways of working around that. So anyway, hope that's been useful. As I say, if you would like to get that audio recording that I did of the intervention to enable somebody to switch from more extrovert to more introvert, to make things more comfortable for them at this point in time in this current situation, then there's a link. Click the link, put in your email, and you'll get the link to be able to download that as an MP3. There's no charge for that. That's on me. It works really, really well. Did it with a client today, and they were delighted. So stay safe. Continue to follow all the kind of like the physical guidelines. What we're talking about here doesn't replace any of those. What it just means is that we're in the best shape together to be able to get through this current situation. So love you lots wherever you are in the world, and we hope.